My father has a composition notebook. The old kind, black and white marbled cover, the ones that cost 60 cents at a drugstore in 1987. He has filled 41 of them over his lifetime. One per year without exception. He writes down everything. Receipts, arguments he had with neighbors, observations about the weather, things his grandchildren said that made him laugh. He also writes down things people do when they think no one is paying attention. That notebook has been sitting in the breast pocket of his cardigan for as long as I can remember. When I was a little girl, I used to think it was just a quirk, a habit, an old man's diary. I was wrong. That notebook was a ledger, and the night my brother Marcus stood in my mother's living room and destroyed my 7-year-old son's birthday gifts while 13 adults sat and laughed, my father was in the corner, chair, watching, writing. He didn't say a single word. He didn't have to. My name is Diane. I'm 44 years old. I'm a brand strategy director at one of the largest marketing firms in this country. I have spent 15 years studying how people present themselves versus who they actually are. I build narratives for a living. I know a performance when I see one. And I know better than almost anyone that the most dangerous people in any room are the ones who understand their audience. 3 months ago, my brother Marcus performed for his audience. 2 weeks after that, my father opened his notebook. But this story doesn't start at a birthday party. It starts 40 years ago, in a house where the television was always too loud and the favorites were never a secret. Before I go any further, if you are watching this and you grew up in a home where love was distributed like a limited resource, where some children were chosen and others were simply tolerated, you already know the specific exhaustion I'm about to describe. Hit subscribe! Drop the word chosen, or in the comments if you know exactly what I mean. Not because you were chosen, because you watched someone else be chosen, every single day, at your expense. My father, George, worked 40 years as a civil land surveyor, a man who measured things for a living. Property lines, boundaries, the exact distance between where something is and where someone claims it to be. He is 71 years old, mostly retired, and he still carries that composition notebook in the same cardigan pocket he has carried it in since I was 9. He is the quietest man I have ever known. My mother, Sandra, is the loudest. And Marcus, my brother, 46 years old, twice divorced, permanently between careers, has always been Sandra's masterpiece. Her proof of something. I was never sure what exactly. Her generosity, maybe. Her capacity to love without condition. Whatever it was, Marcus had it. I spent 30 years watching her build his mythology and quietly sand mine down. I became a brand strategist because I understand that story. I have lived it. I know what it looks like when someone controls the narrative of a room, when they decide in advance who the hero is and cast everyone else as a supporting character. My mother cast me as the difficult one, the one who left, the one who thought she was better than everyone because she had a career and a salary and an opinion. My son Caleb, 7 years old, gap-toothed, obsessed with space and dinosaurs, had committed the unforgivable crime of being born to me instead of Marcus. My mother had held him exactly twice in 7 years. Caleb's birthday was a Saturday in October. I want to be honest with you, I almost didn't go. I had the conversation with myself the way I have it every year. The pros, the cons, the cost-benefit analysis of choosing peace over principle. But my father called me the week before and said very quietly, "Diane, come. Bring Caleb. I need you both there." My father does not make requests. He states observations. So when he said, "I need you both there," I cleared my Saturday. The party was at my mother's house. Small. My mother's 2 sisters, their husbands, a handful of cousins, Marcus and his girlfriend of the moment. 14 people in a house that had always felt smaller than its square footage suggested. Caleb wore a yellow sweater. He'd picked it himself. He kept asking me if it was almost time for the cake. Marcus arrived an hour late, kissed my mother on both cheeks, ignored my father entirely, and looked at Caleb the way adults look at furniture in a room they didn't decorate. The first hour passed without incident. These things always do. There is always a first hour of fine, of past appetizers and careful conversation, that exists only as a runway for whatever comes next. Then my mother announced it was time for gifts. Caleb sat cross-legged on the living room rug, his whole face open the way only a 7-year-old's can be. Pure, unguarded excitement, the kind of happiness that has no strategy behind it, because it doesn't know yet that it needs one. He opened the first gift, a telescope from my father. George had wrapped it himself badly in brown paper and too much tape. Caleb tore through it and gasped. He actually gasped. Marcus from the couch said, "That's a toy, Dad. He'll break it in a week." My father didn't look up. He wrote something in his notebook. Caleb opened the second gift, a dinosaur encyclopedia from my Aunt Carol. He flipped straight to the back index, because that is the kind of child he is, methodical, thorough. He started reading the names out loud. Marcus leaned forward and said, "Nobody wants to hear that, bud." The room went quiet for exactly half a second. Then my mother laughed and said, "Marcus, stop," in the tone she uses when she means, "Don't stop, this is funny." I felt the temperature shift. I know that shift. I have been reading rooms professionally for 15 years. Something was about to happen, and everyone in that room, every adult, already knew it and had already made the private decision to let it. Caleb reached for the third gift. Marcus stood up, walked across the room. "And I want you to understand." He crossed the entire living room with intention. This was not an accident, not a stumble, and he took the gift from Caleb's hands. "Let me help you with that," he said. And then he dropped it. Flat on the hardwood floor, the box split at the corner. A remote control rocket. I know because I could see the picture on the side. Caleb looked at the box. Then he looked at Marcus. His face did that thing children's faces do when they are doing the math, when they are calculating whether what just happened was an accident or something else. Marcus looked back at him with a half smile. And the room, I need you to hear this. The room laughed. My mother's hand went to her mouth, but her eyes were bright. One of my uncles shook his head but didn't say a word. Marcus's girlfriend looked at her phone. My father in the corner chair opened his notebook. I stood up. I am a brand strategist. I have presented to Fortune 500 boardrooms. I have walked into rooms where everyone wanted me to fail and delivered campaigns that won international awards. I do not perform emotions. I use them, precisely, sparingly, at the moment of maximum effect. I walked to the center of that living room. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I picked up the broken box from the floor, set it on the coffee table, and I looked at Marcus with the exact expression I use when a client tries to reframe a disaster as a pivot. "We're done here," I said. Not a question. A conclusion. I took Caleb's hand. I said, "Ma, go get your coat, baby." He went. Marcus said something about me being dramatic. My mother started a sentence about, "Can't we just—" I didn't hear the end of it. I had already turned around. My father stood up from the corner chair. He buttoned his cardigan. He picked up the telescope he had wrapped in brown paper and too much tape. And he followed us out. I need you to stop here for a moment with me. A 46-year-old man walked across a room and broke a 7-year-old child's birthday gift. While the adults watched. While the adults laughed. If you have ever been in a room like that, if you have ever watched a child's face do that math and come up with the answer that nobody in that room cared enough to stop it, drop the word "witnessed" in the comments. Because staying silent in that room is its own kind of choice, and I think a lot of you have sat in that room. I think that is why you are here. My father rode with us in my car. He sat in the back seat next to Caleb and held the telescope in his lap. Caleb had stopped crying by the time we reached the end of the street. My father opened the packaging carefully and handed Caleb the telescope lens to look through at the passing streetlights. They didn't talk about what happened. They talked about Saturn. I drove and I listened to my 71-year-old father tell my 7-year-old son that Saturn's rings are made of ice and rock and that some of those chunks are the size of a house, and I kept my eyes on the road and I did not say a single word. 14 days later, my father called me. "I need you to come to dinner," he said. "At the house, just you. Bring nothing." I went on a Wednesday evening. My mother was not there. She was at her sister's. My father had made soup, the thick kind he makes in winter, and he set 2 bowls on the table, and then he set his composition notebook between them. He opened it. He turned to a page dated 7 years earlier, the month Caleb was born. He said, "I have been writing things down for a very long time, Diane. I wrote down the first time your mother told Marcus you didn't need a college fund because you were smart enough to figure it out yourself. I wrote down the time he took money from your room and she told you you'd misplaced it. I wrote down 17 years of a pattern." He turned more pages. I watched his hands, surveyor's hands, precise and steady. 3 years ago, he said, I went to see a financial advisor, and then an attorney, because a man who measures things for a living knows that the distance between what someone claims and what they've actually done can only be settled one way. With documentation. He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a revised estate document, witnessed, notarized, iron tight, restructuring the inheritance of my parents' jointly held assets. The family home, a savings account built over 4 decades, a land parcel my mother didn't know existed because my father had purchased it in his name alone in 1991 and had been quietly funding it ever since. The new document named 2 beneficiaries, me and Caleb. I looked at my father across the soup bowls. He said, "I'm not dead yet, but I am not naive either. And I am not going to let a man who breaks a child's birthday gifts inherit 40 years of my work." He closed the notebook. "I wanted you to hear it from me," he said. "Not from a lawyer, from me. Because you have spent your whole career telling other people's stories. I wanted you to know that I have been telling yours. In here." He tapped the cover of the notebook. "Every single day." I did not cry. I am a brand strategist. I build narratives from data. I find the signal inside the noise. I tell the story that the numbers are actually trying to tell. My father had been doing the same thing for 40 years. In a 60-cent composition notebook. I called Marcus the next morning. Not to warn him. Not to fight. I called him the way I deliver a final campaign deck to a client who has been difficult. Calmly, completely, without room for negotiation. I told him my father had made his decisions. That the documentation was in place. That nothing about it was up for discussion. I told him this the way I tell a client that the rebrand is final, the logo is locked, the narrative is set. Marcus said I had manipulated our father. He said I had poisoned the family. He said, and this is the one I want you to remember. He said, "You've always thought you were better than us." I let him finish. Then I said, "No, Marcus. I just paid attention to different things," and I hung up. Caleb has the telescope in his room. On a clear night, he can see the craters of the moon from his bedroom window. He calls my father every Sunday and tells him what he found. My father answers every time. He writes it down. I have built campaigns for companies worth billions of dollars. I have repositioned failing brands into category leaders. I have walked into rooms with nothing but a slide deck and a clear story, and walked out having changed how an entire industry sees itself. But the most precise, most patient, most devastating piece of strategic communication I have ever witnessed was a 71-year-old land surveyor in a cardigan, sitting in a corner chair, opening a 60-cent notebook. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He didn't make a scene. He just measured the distance between what people claimed and what they actually did. And then he drew the boundary line. Some people will tell you that family loyalty means looking the other way, that keeping the peace means absorbing the damage. That love is unconditional, which means consequence-free. My father taught me something different. He taught me that the most powerful people in any room are not the loudest ones. They are the ones keeping the most accurate record. Write it down. The things people do when they think no one is watching. The patterns they repeat when they believe they are safe. The gaps between their words and their actions. Write it down and wait. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence is load-bearing. Silence is what you build the truth on top of, so that when it finally speaks, the whole room has to listen. A boundary drawn quietly still holds. If this story hits something in you, if you have a father like mine, or if you wish you did, or if you are trying to be that kind of quiet, precise, paying attention parent for your own children, drop dough. Read notebook, or in the comments. I want to know you're out there. Rate my father's strategy from 1 to 10 below. Smash the like button if you think Marcus had this coming from the moment he walked across that living room. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the quiet ones are always keeping score. Subscribe, because we have a new story every single day. And some of them will completely change the way you think about what it means to pay attention. I'll see you in the next one.